Hello, guys. Welcome to this webinar, What's New in Dynamics 365 Finance 2024 Release Wave number 1, the key updates that I think that you need to know about. And I am Finn Nielsen-Friis from X Academy out of Copenhagen. Welcome to this webinar. Sorry for starting just a little bit late. So let me just move on to it immediately. With me today to help with the chat and everything, I've got Henny and Alison, my colleagues on X Academy, helping me with this webinar in here. Lots of things to go through, and let's just have a look at the presentation in here. So the webinar promise of what we're going to have today is the key updates you need to know about this AI Copilot, or whatever it's called, all over the place. This is not going to be the focus area of today, but it's sneaking in each and everywhere, and perhaps you already use it in the Edge browser, using chat, AIs, or version 3.5, whatever, all that. But once again, not the main focus, just here and there in Dynamics 365, as in a lot of other places too. So some other things about the AI with the things helping you along the way. But the main focus of today is the core financials. This is a webinar about the key updates to financials. So what else should I focus on? But there are a few other things as well about the globalization things or country coverage and tax automation. I'll focus just on one thing because those local things might be interesting to some of you, but not everybody. So general features, and primarily it's going to be about core financials in here. Now, we got an opportunity to ask some questions at the end of the session. By all means, if you've got questions as we go, do drop them in the chat box, and then my colleagues Henny and Alison will take care of. Find the ones that will have some time to do, but I won't answer questions as we go. It will be near the end of this 1 hour session, please. So, exclusive offer. Watching that, well, at least an introduction of something new that we have just started recently at X Academy. Bite-size learning snacks, short courses, instead of all those long ones that we have normally done for exam preparation. More focused, more about that later on. So the topics for today, I have chosen to organize this in this way, not in this sequence, but in this way. Things about the business performance, where there are 18 new features listed by Microsoft. Some of those ones were part already of the prior release wave that I went through in a webinar in August, I think it was, maybe September. You can find that recorded webinar as other ones on our website if you'd like to. But 18 new features about business performance this time around. And then my key thing today, the core financial things were, well, 18 features as well, obviously, not the same ones. A lot of exciting ones, I think. Not huge, not rocket science, all of these ones, but there's so many things that Microsoft continuing to improve on the everyday life, not necessarily just the sort of big bang in the sales room or being salesy with that. A lot of really nice features, and some of these ones we've been asking for years. So I'm looking forward to tell you more about this, especially with the core financial features. I'm going to mention, well, all of them, but I don't have time to go through all the details. So make sure that you study those already existing details in the release wave on Microsoft website, and then you keep an eye on as we go. There's some really good ones in there. I really think so. Globalization Studio, 11 features. I'm just going to mention one. There's a lot of good ones, especially if you're in Latin America. There's a lot of features for Peru and Chile and other things as well. All good, but I'll focus on the one thing. I just want to mention that a tool is going to be consolidated into the Globalization Studio. Fewer tools. For once, Microsoft is always great at adding more tools. And this time around, this one is going to be removed. And that has to do with Globalization Studio. Copilot, one feature. Well, that is not absolutely true. If you have a look at the release wave, indeed, directly under a Copilot sub-menu, there is one feature. But I've highlighted a few places where we get through it, that Copilot is not just in one feature, but that's how Microsoft has organized it. And then once in a while, when you get through business performance, you get through core financials, there are things about Copilot, or AI as it was in the old days, now with the, I guess, more fancy name of Copilot, helping hand as it is. Copilot for Finance is then a separate other one in here, which is mentions about the functionality about Excel and Outlook. Excel and Outlook, some of the tools that we use kind of every day, a lot of us. And the last time around in the release wave 2023 there was something about Outlook also being used for Dynamics 365, customer engagement and other things too. And now under finance, there are more tools mentioned. I'm not going to do much about this. I will, once again, focus on core financials for sure. So with that, I'd like to get started on what I think is really important. But hey, for those of you who care about supply chain management, I've got another webinar coming up in a couple of weeks, the 22nd of March, as you can see. Please, if you are interested, if you've got colleagues who are interested in supply chain management, bump into our website and then sign up for this webinar, which will be 1 hour and 1 busy hour, that one as well. Lots of goodies in there too. But today is about finance, so let me just move on to that. In finance, I have listed some of the functionality that we have in here. I will mention most, but I'm not going to get into details with all of these ones in here. So core financials is the core area that I'm focused on, but just briefly touch base with the business performance Copilot and the Globalization Studio. The way that Microsoft has organized, when you have a look at the release wave, they have organized this in these 4 groups, where under Copilot, won't find much. Under Globalization Studio, we find a lot of things. One general one, as mentioned, and then a lot of Latin American specifics this time around. Under Copilot, just 1 feature is mentioned, and then 18 for core financials and 18 for business performance. The single most important of these areas to me is core financials, and that is where I'm going to put my time today. In the core financials, my grouping, my arrangement, not Microsoft's, when you get in there and you have a look of those 18 features, in order not to get too confused, at least, I would like to think of this in groups or batches or similar functionality, the same area, not necessarily module-wise, but the way that I work with the system or my customers, they work with the system. So this is my grouping. It is not the grouping you'll find under the release wave on Microsoft website. So in this, I have selected to bring once again the AP Clark workspace, and this was an old favorite of mine already in the last release wave. Just couldn't help myself bringing it in here. I'm a big fan of workspaces. Really, when you are an end user, the more workspaces being available, the better, I really think. So, sorry, kind of old news, and it's not the only old news today, for better and for worse. Financial tax is old news too. I'm a big fan of financial tax. Anybody who watched any of my webinars would know that the financial tax, I'll come back to what the feature is. If you haven't met it before, by all means, you should have a look at this in here. It's a great thing. It doesn't quite, as I tried to provoke a discussion in a blog post that I did, it doesn't replace the financial dimensions. I never thought I was going to do that, but just to provoke a discussion, I really think that the financial tax are helping a lot towards reducing the number of financial dimensions. But we'll do that later on. New things to the bank module functionality, not all the things that I would like to see, but a lot of good things in there. When you work with bank accounts and bank account reconciliation and automatic reconciliation, you know how hard work it is in pretty much any company. So the more functionality, the more automatic things that could happen, the better. And actually, I was a bit surprised by how many in this release wave 2, how many new features were actually being invited into the next 6 months or whatever, and not just invited, but already started to show up. There was a lot in the last release wave, some of these ones already available, and there are a lot in these ones in there, and some surprises, good surprises to me, I think. Cache features being mentioned already in a formal release wave, a couple of things being added to this. And once again, cache feature is me grouping that. Some is part of the above mentioned bank module functionality, and some is kind of a separate thing about cache. And I know it's cache and bank management module in Dynamics 365 Finance, but I decided to group this into two separate ones. And there are new things about the currency revaluation, not the business benefit, but the functionality of this, that depending on where you are in the world, that there's different functionality available, required US GAAP and IFRS and other accounting standards you have to meet. And that is when we do inventory evaluation, when we do foreign currency revaluation. So now we've got more tools perhaps allowing us to do things the way that we were supposed to do and have been supposed to do, but had to do it manually with the prior versions in here. So lots of things about currency revaluations, and then a few things about the customers and vendors. So just to revisit to the netting thing that we had, and then a couple of other things, but nothing big in this area, I really think. And then the things about archiving, that you've been running the system for such a long time, and now after 5 years or whatever it will be, depending on the legal regulations in the various countries, you don't have to keep all the transactions live on board your Dynamics 365. You could put it into a parking lot or archive it, as it is called. Nothing I'm going to spend much time on. Once again, by all means, please drop a note in the chat if you got any questions, but maybe let's just get started on the details, and then I'll see if I could preempt some of the questions in here. The workspace, AP Clark workspace, and as I mentioned the last time around in the webinar, we do training on the solution, which is called Xflow, which is an AP invoice automation system. So I'm slightly biased when we're talking about this. That is a disclaimer. So I just wanted to present once again the Microsoft solution that has been added in here or will be improved with the workspace in here. I had this the last time around. I just wanted to remind you about that. The more workspaces overview that we could have, automate the things in here, I really, really like them. It doesn't matter who supplies it, as long as it's helped me with my everyday thing. So I don't have to look too much into the exceptions or whatever. The system will try to handle it for me. So the invoice automation, I'm a big fan of that. Companies have spent lots of time on matching and coding or accounting, distribution, or whatever you call this in here. So Microsoft, whoever who helps with this is good. I really think so. Financial tax. Now, I do hope that you have had a chance to look into financial tax, whether you've been with me in a webinar, you saw the release waves, or otherwise you found your way around the financial tax. But for those of you who haven't yet been working with that, just a recap of what it basically is. It allows you to define fields where you can fill in some values manually, and now even more automatic as we go. Unlike financial dimension values, you can edit already posted transactions with the values in it. And that does wonders to how you can actually later on group, report, do BI, or whatever you like to do with these ones, as you can change on the go. Now, how do you then assign these values in there? More and more automated tools, rules, as they're called, are being added to. So I consider this, Microsoft recommends this to be considered when you think I'll have yet another financial dimension. So now we've got 10 or 20 of whatever number you like to have. Could we use financial tax instead? And in some circumstances, not all, you could. So you could use these to track all the values in here. So it could be used for things where you don't want to predefine things. When you're using financial dimension values, you know, you have to predefine those values. Otherwise, you can't use them automatically or manually add them to a transaction. But with a financial dimension tax, there are no validation rules basically on those. That is good and bad, of of course. Since they are not subject to validation, you can add them on the fly. And once again, even to already posted transaction. That does a lot of things too. When you want to add individual batch numbers or package numbers or RMAs or what you would like to do, without having to pre-create these values in here. Now, that's all fine when you do the manual things in here. But as I mentioned also in this blog post that I did last year, when I think just about 12 or 13 months ago, this was announced with release wave 1 in 2023. What about automated things in here? When this was being added, the functionalities were being added as usual. It started kind of slowly, and now more and more things are added. And now some brilliant new things about this financial tags. I am a big fan of financial tags, and now we got a lot of help coming to us in here. So new features about the financial tags entered about a year ago, and then now new features with some fancy possibilities of defining financial tags. Like when you do a transaction, instead of putting the customer or vendor or whatever account number into the financial dimension values, then we could use the financial tags. So we could still do the reporting and other things based on this, but we don't necessarily consume a financial dimension for this in here. So you can define rules. This is the most important thing, I think, but there are a couple of other new features in here. You can add them in journals and documents, as you can see. And that was with the accounting distribution, we had that already in the last release wave that came out in July or August last year. So 2 new features, and just reminding you about the accounting distribution. It is mentioned by Microsoft in this release wave 2, but it was actually already out in last release wave in here. So what about these rules in here? We're not going through all the details, right? This is just like with the other things in here, just dropping a few hints what could be interesting. Hopefully you'll find a thing or two which you'll find valuable so you can investigate further. So there's no live dynamic 365 in here. There's just a few slides and then some screenshots. And my opinion about this, maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But what I really think with the rules in here is that it'll save you some time. You could do some of the same things that you could do with the default financial dimensions, setting up on the master data, then on one of the last fast tabs or sections, depending on who you are. On one of the last fast tabs on the master data, you could then assign some default values that goes into the transactions when you create those. That's all fine. But what if you want to have lots of those ones coming from all over the place? That's going to be a lot of financial dimensions, and you really need that. Well, until now, you couldn't do that automatically with financial tags. Financial tags were, in most places, things that you would need to add manually. Now, rules are coming, and rules are coming thick and fast. Really good stuff in here. So, just as mentioned, if you want to have a tag with the customer's name, number, or whatever in the transactions in here for traceability and doing business intelligence and other things too, before you would need a financial dimension. Otherwise, you couldn't assign this automatically. Now, you could, of course, have done it manually, but you don't find time for that. There's too many things to do. Now, with these rules, you can assign custom names, lots of things in here with setting up these rules. So you can define the rules per the various transactions, not all transactions yet, as far as I can see, but per the various transactions, you can assign a tag. And then when you get on to the free text invoice, the free text invoice lines, or when you do the distributions on a free text invoice and so on, you can then add financial tags automatically. That is great, I think. I know I'm a big fan of financial tags, but now being able to do this automatically in, if not all, lots of places, then it's really, really good in here, I think. And the way you enter those ones, of course, you can key in the rules yourself. Nice, but hey, Copilot, right? Natural language, assign whatever, and then it converts it into the technical rule, at least if you can make yourself understood. So this is one of the places where I highlighted Copilot. not going to do too much of a separate thing about Copilot, but it just comes in a lot of places. And with the financial tax, with these rules, the 3 different ways of defining rules, Copilot being one, converting that into a technical rule. Then, of course, you could write the technical rule yourself. And then kind of in the middle, you could do this with an expression builder, like we know from a lot of places too. So rules can be defined lots of different places. You assign the values by these rules, then giving them by Copilot, expression builder, or doing the technical rule itself. This is great. And then always a fan of simulation in here, not because I do a lot of mistakes all the time at least, but sometimes I do. So trying to have a look at your effects, like when we do foreign currency revaluation, which we'll come back to later on, or when you do other things, what is the result going to be if I was going to do a thing like that? So you could have a look at the expected results, and then you could say, rule was not good enough, and then move on. I wish we had more of that in Dynamics 365, not just simulating to check if it's okay or not, but actually to have a look at the expected result when we're going to do things. In finance, we got some kind of predictions when we do accruals, periodization, and other things too. And now in here with the financial tax, predicting what's going to happen. So you got a chance to have a look at that. This was obviously, from the time I spent on that, this was one of the things I really found was great in this release wave. If you haven't had a look at financial tax, you should. I really think so. And then the rest is just now more support to add this to more journals, the more exotic ones, bill of exchange permission notes, advanced ledger entry in some other places in here. And then was already announced, as mentioned, was already announced in release wave 2, where I had exactly this slide. So this is kind of old news. I'm not going to bump this old news each and every time we have old news. I didn't do it to the workspace, the AP invoicing client, did I? But this is definitely old news, but good news with financial tax, I think. Now, leaving the financial tax, finally, you might think, going into enhancements, depending on where you are in the world, to the bank module functionality. Now, the bank module, just like invoice automation, Microsoft has some competitors in the market, so to speak. There are some third-party things with AMC Banking, SK Global, and some other things in here with the bank module. And the reason I think, and I still think, is that the bank module in Dynamics 365 is not perfect out of the box. But Microsoft is working on it, and now we got some good news and even some surprises. I never thought they were going to do like this, but yeah, let's just have a look at some of these things in here. One of the biggest things that I always want to have, I want to have a posting profile in the cash and bank management module. Well, it's not in here yet, but I hope it's going to be around sooner or later. I always do sort of sidestepping when we go through this integration from sub-ledgers to general ledger. We use posting profiles or similar things. For the cash and bank management module, it's, well, anyway, what has been improved over here. Now, with the reconciliation reports, lots of things in here, always trying to help people with the unexpected kind of things in here, and to help so we don't have too many exceptions, which we handle manually. So more automatic things, improvements in the rules in the automatic bank reconciliation in here. And once again, let's think about the international accounting standards, so local regulations and rules, that we would like to be more flexible with our choices of exchange rates. So now when you reevaluate in the cash and bank management module, you will have the option to choose between different exchange rate types, not just on sort of the parameter level, but individualize as we go. More details are coming. Lifecycle management, and lifecycle management is sort of like from life to death, obviously, of a bank account. More things about a workflow, approval, changes happening, who should vouch for this. And, you know, bank account is one of the places we need to be careful about fraud and other things too. there are more places where Microsoft are adding things. This is one of the places. Details coming up soon. Let me just finish this one in here with the surprise of the day, to me at least, this one in here with bridged transactions. I always like the idea about bridged transactions, the business idea, but the functionality in Dynamics 365 was not my favorite thing in here. It was a rather manual thing to do the bridge transactions, the parking lot, when you do vendor payments and you pay by check and you don't want the check to affect your bank account until it has been cashed into your bank. Otherwise, reconciliation is going to be harder. Now, then once you actually see the check being cleared in your bank accounts, you want to clear the bridge transaction. That was a rather manual, unless you did some special things. It was a rather manual thing. Now it can be automatically done. I'm a big fan of that. I didn't see that one coming, I have to be honest. Let's get back to some more detail. But first, I'd just like to go through those bullet points in here in the bank module. There's actually a lot of good things coming in here with this. So now the reconciliation report in there will help you then make it easier to reconcile. Slide number 2 will tell you a little bit about what is actually being added in here. So when you have a look at the bank balances and other things too, you'll now easier be able to do something in here with automatically offsetting things. And also some of the things I showed you the last time around, that from the bank account, you could automatically create some journals, payment journals, so customers and vendors and other things too in here to make it much easier to do things in here. So a lot of things in here with the reporting, a lot of things with things being calculated automatically, and then only having to do manual work if the system is not able to find out what was the underlying reason in here. So reporting kind of thing, and also new things in the rules and the advanced bank reconciliation. Well, the advanced is basically just the fancy automatic things with all the rules that you can set up, and more things are being added in here. And once again, trying to make it easier for you in here. Time consuming, definitely it could be that. And now we've got some more things, as mentioned, the things to be able to create some journals, payment journals, customer journals, and so on. If you think you've seen that before, this is true. This is kind of old news as well, but now it is finally coming. And then the new thing in here, the newest thing, I think at least, is the exchange rate types. This we'll see one more time later on. Right now, we're in the bank, cash and bank management module, and later on, we'll see this is also applicable to customers and vendors, or accounts receivable, accounts payable, or whatever the name is in your country. So right now in the cash and bank management module, you will be able to select different kinds of exchange rate. And I think the value is then that you would be able to report the way that you should according to your auditors, your local regulations, to IFRS, or US GAAP, or whatever kind of reporting standards that you follow. Then now you'll be able to select not just the one and only exchange rate that we have, but you'll be able to set it up on various levels in the parameters, on the groups, and on the individual accounts as well. So you could use the standard as we've done all the time in the lecture. Now you can select one in the parameters, and then on the bank accounts, you could set this up. A similar functionality, as you'll see later on, in accounts payable, accounts receivable, slightly twisted, but it's the same kind of idea. You can have the standard, you can change it in the module, you could change it on some more detailed levels too, in the cash bank management module, directly on the bank account, if you would like to. Flexibility, more complying with standards. I like the idea of that. And then the thing about the bank account, the bank accounts, just like when we've got customers and vendors, some of the things you really want to be on top of, that one person changes, another person approves, segregation of duties and all that. And now that can be applied in the bank accounts as well. So if somebody wants to change things on the bank account, they're allowed to do so, but somebody else would need to approve that. possibility, that is. So that means there's new functionality, there are new workflows added in here. So the value of this is that you play it safe, or safer at least, when you want to change things on the master data, when you want to do things from a transactional point of view, when you want to close an account, when you want to sign and other things too. All of that will then allow you to set up things in the parameters in the workflow. What is the condition for that? Who needs to approve, and so on. And I think this is good. I think it should have been here a long time ago. Just when adding it to customers and vendors, hey, why not in Cash Bank Management module? But instead of nagging about that, I would just try to be pleased that it's in here right now. So configure protected fields. If you change things in here, then let's approve it through a workflow, obviously. Okay. And then the small thing, but I think it's a significant thing in here, and maybe because I've sort of given up on that automatically clearing the bridge transaction. I know you can import into general journals, and then you could tell the system to clear the bridge transaction, but is kind of a mess, I think, personally. Maybe you disagree, but that's fine. You can put it in the chat. But I really like this functionality in there, that now if you have any bridged, parked transactions, you can now clear them automatically. And there's actually more than just this. You could set up some different accounts to be used per the different bank accounts in here. So when you do the automatic bank reconciliation, now the bridge transaction could automatically be cleared. And that goes into connection with some of the other things we have seen with automatically creating payment journals, customer vendors, and other things too. So a lot of automatic things in here, and that helps you doing things on time. You get the park transaction, the bridge transactions in here, and then it is being reversed when the payment is on the bank statement. Like you send a check to the vendor, you don't post into the bank account, but what you see in the bank account that the vendor has cashed in the check, then you would like to then clear the bridge transaction in here, and then you can define what will then happen in here with that. So I highlighted this, not Microsoft, I highlighted this. The second step is the one that automates the things in here. I like this functionality. So you can define that, how it's going to happen. You can set it up per bank account in here. Depending on how you've been using bridge transaction before, you were setting up things on the method of payments, and when you had a check payment, you will select bridge transaction, and you will select the main account on the method of payment in here. Now, some other possibilities have been added. But cash, getting slowly towards some of the other functionality that has been added in here. Cache features, one of them is new. Another one is, we've seen some of this being announced before. So these two ones in here manage the petty cache and then set up the autonomous cache application, which is similar to some of the things we've seen before. But I decided to put it into one group. I did. This is in Cash and Bank Management module, kind of, but I decided to put this on its own group in here. Now, what are the details about this? Well, the reason for this is that when you handle petty cache, it's not been too much functionality. You could have something in the travel expense module and in a few other places with cash advantages for traveling and other things too. There's not been too much control of this. Now there's more functionality coming around in here, and how big this really is from business advantage, I'm not sure. Cash, of course, is being used in businesses where you've got shops and other things too. But a lot of things are happening now with credit cards and with bank transactions and other things too. But anyway, it's in here, and the less fraud, the misuse, and keeping track of things in here, of course, the better we could have this in here. So I put it in here just to mention that we got more things in the cache in here. So there could be some limitations to how much it could be, when and how it can be posted, and an approval workflow for this one as well in here for that. So great, fine. And then for cash accounts, we can run foreign currency revaluation in here. Now, the thing about the autonomous cash application in here, okay, you've done that before, and I remember when we did that last time around, I was a little bit, what does that mean? It runs cash all by itself or whatever. It's more like Copilot kind of thing. It's trying to be helpful with creating transactions where it makes sense and where it will save you some time. So, as mentioned before, the bank reconciliation, right? So now it's under cash, I know, but it could have something to do with cash and it could have something to do with the other kind of transactions. But I put it over here just to remind you about some of the things you could do. You've seen some of this before, that when you run this, you see transaction to cash transaction, we could automatically create transaction journals and other things in other places too. Yes, I like things to be automated. I would like to focus on exceptions only, and the more kind of exception things that the system could handle for me, the better. And that's where Copilot is really great, and these rules and other things that you can create in various places are really great. Now, one of the things I'm not going to do too much about is the performance kind of things in the business performance, but have a look at those. There are some great things in there as well. Back to core financials about the foreign currency revaluation. I mentioned one of these ones already, the ones I put in parentheses, because I mentioned to you already that under the cash and bank management module, we've now got the possibility to use the one from the ledger, set up one in the cash and bank management parameters, and then on each of the bank accounts, we could set up which exchange rates we're going to use, the exchange rate type selection that would be. But I also mentioned in that overview that it's being added, the same functionality being added to customers and vendors. So the first one in here, choose from more exchange rate types for currency revaluation, customers and vendor kind of thing, and then the one in parentheses I mentioned already. So it's basically the same idea that you can now select from more exchange rate types in here, not just the ones you have as the default or manual selecting things, but you can predefine things in here slightly different over here. It's not going to be like find Wally or anything like that, but the difference in here is kind of in the last line. I know it's accounts payable parameters and accounts receivable parameters, but the last thing in here is where you can set it up on the group. That is not possible in the cash and bank management module. I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but it's not at least stated it's going to happen in the cash and bank management module. You can set up for the bank groups. The bank groups is a completely different thing from the things we have with customers or vendors, right? The bank group is basically just, the branch, the contact person, and a few other things in there, not as big as we got with the customer and the vendor group. But anyway, same functionality, same idea, be more compliant with, out of the box compliant with accounting standards, whether being given by local country rules or US GAAP or whatever you're using in here. And now in the accounts receivable, accounts payable, the American names for this, or sales ledger, purchase ledger, English names for that, or whatever it's called in your countries. Now, same thing, use the standard one, set up on the parameters for customers and vendors, and then on the groups, you could then override that. In the cash bank management module, it was not on the group level, it was on the individual bank account level, but the same idea. Well, the last time around, we had I had some customer and vendor balance netting, and I also mentioned the last time around this is not allowed in all countries unless you have the customer or the vendor's acceptance of that. So, if you owe the vendor 10,000 and the vendor is also a customer with you and owes you 4,000, you just send the vendor 6,000. In some countries, you have to say, please, get an agreement or whatever. In some countries, you're just allowed to do that. So the functionality is basically saving money on bank transactions, making it easier, and not running the risk of you paying your vendor, but your vendor being your customer never pays you. That was already in the last release wave. Just a couple of extra notes in here this time around. And then there's a few things with Copilot, once again, been adding things in here, and then things about the prepaying on the sales invoice on that. So net balancing in here, mentioned the last time around. I'm not going to do any more details about that. And thanks, that was it. And then for the next ones in here, I'm not going to mention too much. I can see there's been some activity in the chat, so I just want to make sure that we got some time to have a look at the question and answers in here. So I think within the next 5 minutes or so, I'll have a look at the questions. So if there are any kind of things happening with the vendor invoices in here, it might be that you manually would search for the things in here. Now, what can happen is that Copilot, once again, highlighted in here that it could help you. For instance, it's learning things. That's what it's good at. It's trying to see a pattern. And then if you got any going back and forth and looking through, finding the errors or whatever, the Copilot could help you doing those things and even automate the things in here. One thing you should be careful about understanding with the Copilot, if you navigate to the release wave, you will see Copilot mentioned in 2 or 3 places directly on the release wave, on the core financials, or under an area in itself. But it's in more places when you then get into some of the automation things, or some of the features that will help you plan things in it. Copilot is mentioned in a lot of places. So when I put in the invitation for this webinar, when I put up the automation AI Copilot thing up here, it's not necessarily a big thing when you have a look at the release wave. There's just so many features which will use the Copilot in here. This was in one place, and maybe you remember the rules you could set up for the financial tax. Copilot was mentioned in there. It's not listed in the release wave under sort of a Copilot topic or collection of topics in it. It just comes into so many places. So if you haven't worked with Copilot or haven't tried to use it or haven't read about it, I think you should. It is in this release wave in quite a few places in finance. And also, as you'll see in a couple of weeks, if you join me for our next webinar, then you'll see it's also in supply chain management. And it's taken away a lot of the tedious things, like in this example, the things going back and forth or investigating or whatever you'd like to. It's really helpful. You could focus on the things that really matters in here. So it'll try to find out, where can I do it myself? Where should it highlight things for the AP payment, invoicing, matching, clerk, and then you could focus on those things in here. Okay. Finally, in the financial stuff, there are archive features, and basically archive features is sort of offloading the transaction, put them into another parking lot to, roughly speaking, of that. So you don't, whenever you go through the transactions, you have to go through transactions for the last 10 or 15 years. Dynamics 365 finance operation is fairly soon to celebrate the 10 years anniversary in a couple of years, not under the same name, has changed the name a few times, but we have customers who've been working on it for a long time. And if you don't want to sort of be able to go through all the transactions, why not offload them from the system and put them into a parking lot? Still available, of course, but you could archive those ones. So now more possibilities are coming with this release wave in here, where you could do that. In some of the places we've been able to do that for a while, and now some more things are being added in here. Select which data it should be, and some of the ones already defined, tax transactions, and obviously general ledger transactions as well. Business performance, just want to mention, this is in here. The business performance is a lot of things which can help you. And this is where you could have a look at reaching, planning, automation, analytics, and other things too. And then automatically brings things to your attention or just pass by this. So this is kind of the headline of a lot of things that has been added. I'm not going through the details. Time doesn't allow me. You should definitely have a look at that. In the Globalization Studio, as always, new functionality is being added. Globalization Studio is the tool where Microsoft or we, partners and other people, can then define things which are not global, but local. There where you do exceptions when you want to do MOPS in Denmark or VAT in the UK in different ways for things that Microsoft hasn't yet learned, then we could build some rules ourselves. Out of the box, we have more and more things coming. And this time around, there's lots of things that has been added to the Latin American region, lots of functionality. There was just one thing in there I wanted to highlight. So in this, that the tool RCS that we had before, doing sort of the same things in here with customizations and other things too, is now being merged into Globalization Studio. So you don't have in the future, can't remember the date, but you don't have two tools for similar thing, manual, Microsoft things, distribution, other things. Now there's one tool going forward, the Globalization Studio. So especially Latin America, that was a lot of things coming out this time around. So please make sure if you work in that region to make sure that you have a look into this. And if you've been working with RCS, please also read the notes in this release wave as well. Now, not up on all the Copilot things. I mentioned it a few times, and you can have a look for yourself in those. What was it this time around? 700 pages or 800 pages in release notes. That's just for finance, but for Dynamics it was. Lots of things about Copilot in here. Saving time, that's the thing in here. I mentioned a few places, and one of the most interesting thing is that finally we have in Dynamics 365, we had another Microsoft tools for a long while, but in Dynamics 365, we have this into natural language and then allow Copilot to write the rules for you. That's about time. And I'm looking forward to that happening in other places. The one place where I've noticed it, at least this time around, was for the financial tag rules. And hopefully this will be added in a lot of places soon. Maybe next time we meet with a Release Wave webinar in August, perhaps this year. Cross-app capabilities, no, I'm not going to mention much of that. The only thing in there is more about one Dynamics, one platform, Dataverse, and things. Not much in there this time around. So I will just leave that. And soon I'll leave this webinar, but we've got another one coming. I've got a Q&A session coming up, but just want to remind you that we've got webinars coming once in a while, another one coming up soon, the 22nd of March, 11 o'clock Central European Time, where we'll have a look at some similar things. Release Wave, right? Automated Copilot is going to be in there, and lots of other things too. And the ethical sourcing practices, just going to mention that, that's a buzzword in some countries this time. So let's have a look. Hopefully you'll sign up. It's the sign up is live and kicking on our website as of today. I think Alison put it on, and hopefully I'll see some of you or some of your colleagues at that time. And also want to mention that we are just today a new bite-sized course. The bite-sized courses for us is instead of having those very long exam preparation courses, which we have done a lot. Now we are breaking into focus on one particular thing. And since we're working on a fairly big project right now in the UK where purchase requisition is big, we thought, why not do a purchase requisition course? There's so much in there. So the bite-sized thing is more that this is one area, and then you could just have a look at the sort of at a glance, or as we call it, some quick overview, and then you would know how to do purchase requisition, and then deeper dives and exercise and other things. These are things coming in lots of different areas. And hey, why don't you write, if you got any ideas? I would like to have one on purchase requisitions. Got that. I'd like to have one on purchase orders coming soon. And if you want to have finance, right? Periodical processes in finance, bite size, that is coming too. So we hope to have one out every week this is this one for this week in here. That was a jingle kind of thing. Okay, now allow me to have a look into the question and answers and questions. Please, I'll just have a look at that and see if my colleagues have prepared some of the ones over here. Right. Okay, let's see in the chat. Questions being passed on. Ledger allocation rules. Okay, just reading a lot. I've got a question in here about if financial tax can be used in ledger allocation rules. Not yet, as far as I've seen, but coming with the feature in here with the rules that we have, I think it could be applied in that one. I haven't tried it out yet in here. So thank you very much for that question, Adam. Business management analytics available for finance operations. I can't answer you. Don't know that yet. Any use regard preparing? Yes. So I've got a question here from Dora. Is there any news regarding processing customer prepayments? Yes, there is. There is in the release notes. There's something I didn't mention that today, but if you have a look at the release wave, there is prepayments for customers. I can't remember if it's just on sales orders or whatever it is, but the short answer is yes. A question about financial tax, if they can be used within a financial reporter. I don't think so yet. Between you and me, financial reporter is not the place where Microsoft puts a lot of money to develop new functionality. I like the tool, really, but I wish that Microsoft would spend more money on doing new things in there. It is, you can quote me on that. It's just like it's got some, well, just enough to keep it alive until something better happens. I'm not sure, sorry. But no, as far as I know, you cannot use financial tax inside Financial Reporter. If it's going to happen, I hope so. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Either kill the bird or make it fly, also with financial tax. But for now, I'm not sure. So I think that was it. Thank you very much for joining from cold and sunny UK and Netherlands, Poland, Norway, and Brisbane. Long time since I've been to Brisbane. That was great. Champagne and oysters and things. Not much champagne and oysters today in Copenhagen, but I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, the webinar is recorded. It'll be available within a day or so. And if you thought there was just one or two things in here that was useful, give it a go. Our next webinar, supply chain management, coming up in a couple of weeks. And in half a year, we've got another one in here as well. So thank you very much for joining out of Copenhagen. This was Finn. Nice and sunny, but cold over here as well. So thank you for spending your time in here with me. Don't forget, we've got another webinar coming up. That was it. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon.